Right, it's 2 o'clock, we'll make a start. Welcome to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council. My name is Councillor Peter Fain and I'm the Chair of the Council, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Peter Sanford. Before we start on the business proper, we have all heard some very tragic news about the family of one of our council colleagues who has tragically lost members of her family in a fire. And because she's well known to many of us and as is terrible news, so I would ask you to just join me in observing a minute's silence during which we reflect on this sad news. Thank you, members. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and we also allow recording, filming and photography so long as the meeting isn't disrupted. Please would all members ensure that their phone is on silent. Would you please keep your microphone switched off until you're invited to speak? If participating remotely, when you're invited to address the meeting, please make sure your microphone and camera are switched on, and that when you finish addressing the meeting, please turn your microphone and camera off. Members attending remotely should indicate their wish to speak through a chat message in the Teams meeting, and those present in the chamber should indicate their wish to speak as usual by raising their hand. And I will ask the Vice Chair to note the order of speakers, so if you would make a point of catching his eye if you wish to speak. I stress that the chat facility should not be used for any other purpose, except when necessary to write down a simple amendment if we come to that. Any complex amendments to motions to be taken later should have been shared with democratic services and could still be. When we move to a vote on any item and there is not clear affirmation, I will state that a recorded vote will be taken, and members in the chamber will then vote electronically, for, against or abstain, and the result will be displayed on the screens. The meeting is quorate, so we will proceed, but before we do that, I just want to welcome some young members who you'll be hearing from shortly to our audience, and one particular additional young member who is very welcome today. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. There are apologies from Councillors Hobro, Nieto, Hales, Smith and Van der Weyer. And I think we have Councillor Heather Williams and Councillor Toomey Hawkins joining us online.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations.
I just simply wanted to comment that Councillor Arrow Khan will be arriving, but he will be about 10 minutes late.
Thank you for that. Noted. Any others? Good. So item 2 on our agenda is declarations of interest. Do any members have interest to declare in relation to any item of business on the agenda? Yes, I beg your pardon. Councillor Heather Williams online, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just that I'm a member of the Greater Cambridge Partnership Assembly in relation to the item on that topic.
Thank you for that. If any interest subsequently becomes apparent later in the meeting, please would members raise it at that point. And I would remind members that we need to keep our interests of register of interests up to date. And so we should inform Democratic Services team of any changes. Item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting, which is on pages 13 to 29 of your agenda. That's the meeting held on 25th of May. Do any members have any amendments to these minutes? Councillor Bradman.
It's just a very small item, Chair. It's item 21 on the agenda, on our page 28 of the agenda pack, and I will read it as it is written. The Chair presented Councillor Anna Bradman with a commemorative badge, of which I'm very proud, but which was provided to all former chairs, not formal chairs.
Thank you for that. I'm glad to hear that you're very proud of it. We will not note those words in the minutes.
I'm wearing it.
Any other amendments to the minutes? See anyone? No. Can I propose that we approve these minutes as amended and call for a seconder? Thank you. My Vice Chair will second that. Members, are you content to take this decision by affirmation? Agreed. Anyone against that proposal? Anyone abstaining? Thank you, members. The Council therefore agrees the approval of the minutes of the last meeting as amended as a correct record. Announcements. We have various announcements today. Before I make any announcements myself, Deputy Leader, do you wish to make any announcements?
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, for myself as Chair, I would like to announce the selection of the Chair's charity for the next year. We have talked to a number of organisations, and I'm glad to say I would like to appoint as our charity for the next year the Camborne Youth Partnership. There are a number of reasons for this. I am particularly keen that we should do more to engage with the community immediately around us, as well as the wider district community. And we are all keen to engage more with youth in the district. And indeed, we have set up a task and finish group for that purpose, which Councillor Richard Stobart is chairing. And I will in a moment just ask Councillor Richard Stobart to say a few words about that. But before I do that, give me a moment. Well, that task and finish group has been working for a while now and has come up with some suggestions which we will come back to more formally at our next meeting. So before I ask Councillor Richard Stobart to comment on that, I would like to invite Nigel Taylor, who's the chair of the Camborne Youth Partnership Trustees, to speak to Council. And Nigel has with him a couple of colleagues, and it would be good to hear from them as well. Nigel, we would welcome the chance to hear from you about some of the work that CYP does.
Where would you like me to speak from?
Come up to the front, yes.
We have a roving mic for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much Chair and councillors for inviting us this afternoon. As on behalf of the Chair, on behalf of all the trustees of the Camborne Youth Partnership, we're delighted to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing in Camborne. Delighted that you are interested in the work of young people in the area generally, and then in Camborne in particular. All I'd like to say is that you should all have received a 2-page document electronically, which we produced for this meeting, so that you got a little bit of an overview of what we do. The Youth Partnership has been going on now for over 15 years, much longer than I've been involved in it. And we worked out of a very small mobile building for many years, which some of you might have known, but just over a year ago, as a result of Section 106 money from the Town Council and other sources, we now have a purpose-built youth centre within Camborne called Camborne Soul, if you drive past it, which is now the base of our operations. And we're delighted to have a much better building from which to operate. I don't want to say any more now. I'd like to introduce you to Emma Whitbread, who's one of our youth workers, who talk a little bit more about our work, who will then in turn introduce a couple of young people who've been involved with us for a while. Emma, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having us. It's a real honour. I grew up in Camborne. I've lived here since the age of 4. And I also attended the youth clubs in our very small porta cabin that we've only just managed to say goodbye to. But yeah, like Nigel says, we have got an amazing facility now, and we are really, really lucky. And it's been able to expand our work, increase our kind of capacity. I think if I just kind of go through a general kind of overview of what we kind of do in a week, we do lots of open access sessions. We have about 4 for different age groups, but we also have things like boxing, art and craft, drop-ins, baking groups, and we also then do targeted support. So we often get referrals from the local school, and we do work with individuals that are potentially at risk of being kind of excluded. So yeah, we do lots of different things. And we also have different football groups and that sort of thing. All of our sessions are free. We work with about over 100 young people each week. And obviously that varies. And at the moment, we're obviously working with the current year 6s that are going to be moving up to year 7. So we do quite a lot of transition work as well. We also then work with the older end and some of our young leaders here. But kind of preparing them once they kind of reach 18 up to 21, preparing them then for adulthood and line of work and training and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'd like to introduce you to Bella and Paige. They also grew up in Camborne, but they can kind of share a bit of about their kind of story.
Hi everyone. I am Bella, and like Emma said, Paige and I have both grown up in Camborne since we were little, and we have both, since growing up at secondary school, we have both been going to the youth clubs through the week, and I think it was a decision for us to choose to volunteer, to sort of give back, and hope that other people can follow on in the future. So it is just an ongoing thing so that we never run out of volunteers. But no, the youth club is brilliant. They do offer an absolute variety of things, not necessarily just in Camborne, but throughout Cambridgeshire. But for us, Camborne has been brilliant. So we do run baking group.
So as Bella said, we went for like 5 years. We've been going since we're like 13, and then we carried on going. And then Camborne gave us the opportunity to do our Young Leaders course. So we've got a level 2 in youth work, and they put us through that course, and we've got like our DBS and safeguarding and stuff. So we've got additional qualifications as well as doing the youth work course. And then we run our own separate group alongside Emma. So we target a lot of the transitioning year 6s and 7s to grow confidence. So we have a little group at the moment of girls that we bake with on a Friday, and then we stay on through the night with Emma and a few other colleagues, and we do our older group, which is a more challenging group, but nevertheless always really fun. So yeah.
Thank you very much, all three of you. And can I just add, very important, that our work is in partnership. And it's mentioned on the sheet, but two very important partnerships. One is with the Town Council, who very generously give us a grant every year, which provides a substantial amount of our funding. And then secondly, our partnership with Romsey Mill, an organisation you might have heard about who works around the whole area of Cambridge in a variety of contexts, particularly among young people. And they also provide financial support and infrastructure support for the work that we do. And without those two partnerships, we couldn't operate at the level that we operate here in Camborne. So thank you for your interest. We will look forward to hearing more about the project, the youth project that's being investigated and being part of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Nigel and to Emma, Bella and Kate. And I think we all get a much better flavour and understanding of the work that we hope to give a little bit of support to. I was very keen that in addition to a small contribution, charitable contribution that we may be able to make over the next year or so towards projects underway, that we should also take the opportunity to engage with the Youth Partnership. And I think that is important in view of the work of our Task and Finish group, which the Scrutiny and Overview started, a project to investigate and make recommendations of how we ensure the voice of youth in South Cambridge is both sought and heard. And it was recognised we need to start a process whereby youth engagement becomes more completely a part of our culture at South Cambs, and that the processes of young people engagement are woven into our pattern of work. That group hasn't, of course, reported yet. The plan is that they should report at our next council meeting, but I understand that the need for engagement with young people by members of the council is one of their recommendations, so this is very much in line with that. I hope that the work of the Chair's initiative will fall squarely into the zone of their likely recommendations. I don't know whether Councillor Richard Stobart, who will have an opportunity to report formally at the next meeting, wants to just add a word or two with your indulgence before we move on.
Chair, thank you. I think you summed the situation up very well. That's the position that the Task and Finish group took. I'd just like to underline something that has emerged from the work and which led to the conclusions that you just nicely summarised, is that, I mean, we sometimes think of our young people, and we're very careful at the start of the activity to define what young meant, and that was 11 to 25. 11 to 25 is quite a broad age range, but we wanted to capture that whole transition. But in investigating that transition, we found, and on reflection, young people in that age range are not just, in a sense, tomorrow's citizens, they are today's citizens. And we wanted to, or we through this process, discovered really how complex life as a, quote, young person is, and how it's fluid and dynamic, and how we need to keep engaging with young people, simply in order to understand this picture of what it's like to live as a youth in today's culture. So there's an awful lot we have started to discover, and we think that, as you've said, engagement of members with young people in all places, you know, we talked about with youth in Camborne, but also in businesses, in schools, in colleges, and just going about business. I think that engagement is vitally important for us to understand this group and to engage with them properly. So more later, but thank you for your summing up. And I hope
thank you for that, and for your indulgence, Councillor, in hearing Councillor Stobart on that. And again, thanks to our guest speakers for that. We will hear more at the next council meeting on that subject, and there will be further engagement before then. So we then move on to item 6, which is questions from the public. Now, before we invite questions or statements from members of the public, I would just remind any speakers that this has to be within the scope of our public speaking scheme. In particular, I draw attention to the requirements of Part 1 of our scheme on the scope and of questions and statements. And as chair, I may reject any statement which is not about a matter for which the local authority has responsibility and which affects the district, which is not a matter falling within the cabinet committee or subcommittee remit, or where that part of that statement is vexatious, defamatory, or frivolous. And if I, as chair, think that any speaker is straying outside the scope of the scheme, I will step in with a reminder. Now, we have received one request to make a statement from Mr. Daniel Fulton. I don't know whether Mr. Fulton is present or online and would wish to make his statement. I think not. We'll then move on to item 7, which is petitions. I understand that no petitions have been received. We then move on to item 8A, which is the report of the Audit and Corporate Governance Committee, their annual report for 2022-23. And I would call on Councillor Atkins, Chair of the Audit and Corporate Governance Committee, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to present this report to members. It's a guaranteed page turner, if ever there was one. I'll start with an update, I think, on the external audit. So members will already be aware that past audits have been significantly delayed, starting, I believe, with the 16-17 audit, in common with some other authorities. I think at the last count, only about 12% of local authorities were up to date with their reporting and audit requirements, which gives you a sense of the challenges currently faced by the sector and by our partners in industry in meeting requirements. In the case of this council, I think it's fair to say that there was a perfect storm of internal and external factors that contributed to a downward spiral in our ability to complete audits promptly. However, I'm pleased to report today that those internal issues have been reversed, although to be clear, I take no personal credit for this. The team here at the council is now better resourced and with new leadership, revamped systems and improved processes. Externally, there has been a renewed focus from government and the wider audit industry to complete delayed audits in a timely fashion. And we're therefore now benefiting from a positive spiral where both the finance team and external audit team are completing the necessary work much faster than before. So the 19-20 audit, which was signed off earlier this year, was the first to be completed in under 12 months in some time. For more details, you can see the table in the report. I'm also very happy to report that the 20/21 audit fieldwork is underway as we speak and is progressing well. Of course, we can't give any concrete assurances midway through an audit because issues could obviously arise at any time. But I can say that we're benefiting from a much larger external audit team, which is being matched by some fantastic efforts from our own officers. As of today, there are no significant issues to report, and the audit is progressing in line with the fairly rapid timetable set out in the full report. The Audit and Corporate Governance Committee will, of course, continue to receive regular updates on future progress. The committee has also been very active in monitoring the work of internal audit, risk management, treasury management and governance as detailed in the report. I would also like to draw members' attention to the bullet points listed on page 33 of our pack. There's some best practice there which we wanted to emphasise kind of right across the council. And your reward for doing so are the delightful photos on page 34, which are clearly going to follow us for the rest of our political lives. I'd like to finish by thanking officers for their work of the past year and for all the councillors who served on the committee, including Councillor Sanford as Vice Chair and Councillor Heather Williams as the lead opposition spokes. I'm happy to take any questions on this report that members have today. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Do we have any questions from members on that report? Yes, Councillor Richard Williams first.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the report and the update. I just had a few questions. I mean, I noted in the executive summary we refer to some problems with auditors, but of course I think it's accepted this council has had problems with its audit, and we are further behind with our audits than other local authorities. You don't have to look very far to find local authorities who are much more further advanced with this and who use the same auditor, so I don't think we can entirely blame external auditors, but then again, from the audit report, I'm not sure we are. But my questions are really, is it realistic, thinking of the 2021 audit, the forecast sign-off date is September 2023, that's now 6 weeks away, and if we're still in the audit fieldwork stage, is that still a realistic timetable? And then my second question is, if this timetable works out as proposed for the 22-23 audit, would we be then back in a position where we can complete audits in a timely way? I presume that's the intention. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor, for your questions, which are very pertinent. In terms of the audit timetable that we're currently working to, so to be clear, that's targeting a sign-off at the September Audit Committee, which I think is a few weeks into September. So I think we have perhaps 1 or 2 more weeks than the 6 you suggested. But I have taken assurances that we are still on track for that timetable. The field work is due to be complete in the next couple of weeks. We've got a few weeks then for resolving any final issues and for some kind of quality assurance processes. But I am still expecting to receive it at the September committee. And then as to your broader point, yes, I mean, as you can see from the kind of accelerated timetable, the aim is to be up to date within the next kind of 2 years. And from then, by which point we will also have rotated onto a new audit firm. And the ambition then would obviously be to keep these best practices and efficient workings that we've sort of had to develop by necessity, and to continue to complete audits in a really timely fashion, so that they can provide the kind of assurance that public and suppliers and other stakeholders would expect. Thank you.
Councillor Anna Bredman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Atkins. I just wanted to thank you for such a succinct and clear report from the Audit and Governance Committee. And I'm very much reassured by the simplicity of the format and the straightforwardness of the details that you've put in it. So it's not a question, it's a statement. I just wanted to thank you for a very clear report. Thank you.
I think no comment is required on that. I was going to say much the same. Thank you, Councillor Atkins. We then come to item 9. This is the extension to the 6-month attendance rule and the appointment of Chair and Vice Chair of Employment and Staffing Committee, pages 41-42 of your printed papers. And I call on the Deputy Leader of the Council to present this report and move the recommendations.
Point of information, please, Chair. Obviously, this is the committee that oversees the 4-day week. Are all officers in compliance with the Officers' Code of Conduct when it comes to the registering of non-pecuniary interests? Thank you.
I understand on consulting our legal officer that there is a process underway to investigate this, and therefore it would be improper for council to discuss that while that legal process is underway. So I'm going to ask you to wait for the outcome of that legal process, and you may, if you wish, raise this at a future meeting of this council when that legal process has been completed. You can, of course, discuss it if you want to with the monitoring officer outside of this meeting. I then return to item 9. I call on the Deputy Leader of the Council to present this report and to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, members will be aware that we have a 6-month rule whereby members who don't attend a meeting of the council can be disqualified. And we have a situation with our colleague, Councillor Will Jackson-Wood, caused by a significant medical condition that arose. And the proposal for this, fortunately, Will is now making a staggered return to work, but we're trying to minimise his exposure to stress and otherwise avoidable work so that he can recover completely. So the proposal before us today is to extend that period by a further 6 months so that he has a chance to recover completely. Due to his position as Chair of Employment, we are also recommending to the Council that they agree the appointment of Sally Ann Hart as Chair of Employment and Councillor Anna Brandnham as Vice Chair of the Employment and Staffing Committee. That's a proposal before the Council.
Do you have a seconder for your proposal?
I'll ask Councillor Williams. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I agree with the proposals that are put in front of us, and the Conservative group just wanted to wish that Councillor Will Jackson-Wood a speedy recovery.
I'm sure that is appreciated. Council, can we take this by affirmation?
Agreed.
Anyone against? Anyone wish to abstain? Council therefore agrees to that motion. Then proceed to reports. Item 10 of our agenda, report of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. This is on pages 43 to 53 of your printed papers. And the Council is invited to note the updates from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. Do our representatives on the Combined Authority have any comments they wish to make? Councillor John Williams.
Not at this stage, no.
Councillor Judith Rippeth.
On the scrutiny committee, just to say that, as you can see from Appendix 2, there's just been the opening meeting with the new committee members, and that the chair of the CPCA opening scrutiny is Councillor Charlotte Kane, who is a councillor in East Cambs, and the vice chair is Councillor Andy Coles, who represents her ward in Peterborough City. That's all there is really to report so far.
Thank you for those reports. I think I need only say that item is noted. We aren't required to take a vote on it. Item 11, Greater Cambridge Partnership, is on pages 55 to 87 of your printed papers, and the Council is invited to note the updates from the Greater Cambridge Partnership. Do our representatives on the GCP have any comments they wish to make? I call on the Deputy Leader again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just briefly give an outline to the meetings that we've had since the last meeting of our Council. So we've had a meeting of the Joint Assembly of the Greater Cambridge Partnership. We've had a meeting of a specially convened joint meeting of the Executive Board and the Joint Assembly to review their previous meeting, and then we've had also an Executive Board meeting so that we could take the results of that careful and considered deliberation of the results of the Making Connections consultation exercise, and we are now working on coming up with a solution to the, let's call them objections to the Making Connections and the things that were supported in there, principally the enhanced bus services, for example, and that's a work in progress to come up with an alternative to the original Making Connections proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I ask any of our representatives on the GCP Assembly if they want to add to that, does anyone have questions for Councillor Brown-Milnes? Yes, Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. It relates to the Greenway programme, and really it's a request to ask for the support for this council and for its representative for the extension of the Sawston Greenway on the along the western edge of the Sawston bypass, the A1301, so that links to an existing national cycle route to my village of Whittlesford. There has been some doubt expressed about that aspect of the Greenway programme. Can I just stress the importance of that Greenway extension so that it links with that national cycle route, it links to my village, it then provides a direct route to Whittlesford Parkway, it then provides the potential for onward extension of the Greenway to Duxford, and it provides the potential for westwards expansion of the Greenway to Triplo and to villages like Foulmere. So that extension down the western side of the bypass is vitally important. So can I please ask for this council's representative support for the maintaining that within the Greenways programme?
Councillor Milnes, do you wish to comment?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm obviously, as a local member for that area, I'm quite familiar with the Greenway proposition. And you'll know that part of the problem is that we do have alternative routes to that. So although that may be a preference to build that, there is a route along the village college and down the Old Cambridge Road, and there's going to be a further route into the village, into the city along the CSEP route. So I will not make myself a hostage to fortune by giving you an assurance that that will remain, because in the budgetary pressure, and bear in mind that the 500 million that was the city deal would in today's figures be worth 664 million, and we haven't had the advantage of being index linked. So there will be pressures, and I can't give you the assurance you're looking for. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, did you want to come back on that?
Well, obviously, I would only say that I'm disappointed by that. CSET doesn't provide an alternative to the links to Whittlesford and Duxford, and as I say, Triplo and Foulmere. I would emphasise again, I've heard your answer, but I would certainly argue for safeguarding that as a vital way of extending the Greenway out to a significant number of villages. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions for Councillor Milnes? Do any members of the Assembly wish to comment on developments? Thank you, Councillor Milnes. I see no others. Thank you very much for your report. That item is noted. Yes, I apologise. I hadn't noticed that Councillor Heather Williams, who is on Teams, also wished to comment on this. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just think it should be noted that the Assembly has discussed at length the Making Connections survey, as Councillor Milnes referred to, and we did indeed have a joint meeting, which was, but what I would say is that language is very, very important, and it be reminded, and I'd quite like to hear some assurances from the Deputy Leader that when, as our board member, he will be looking through that very carefully, because we saw a very big debate based on language that could have been very much avoided, and that's a reminder that everybody, even if they are a lone voice, should be respected for their views and given the space in which to raise their concerns.
Councillor Milnes, did you want to respond to that?
I'm not sure I actually understood Councillor Williams' point there. Clearly, we are taking on board, in the case of the Making Connections, 140,000 different free text answers, for example. So we are certainly taking account of all views expressed.
Councillor Heather Williams,
Chair,
are you reassured by that, or did you want to
Not at all, because Councillor Brown-Milnes was in the same meeting as I was. It wasn't a great display of all inclusivity of views. And what I was referring to was language, and specifically one of the things that was mentioned was if there's no STZ, then do nothing. And we spoke at length that that was not good language to use. It was very negative, and actually it's just not accurate. And that's what I'm referring to. And Councillor Milnes was at that meeting. Can I be assured that that will be looked at in future?
Are you able to add anything, Councillor Mills?
Chair, I'm more than happy to take this conversation off line with Councillor Williams, so I'll get a better understanding of the specifics that she refers to. And if we haven't been using appropriate language, then I'll certainly try and remedy that.
That seems a sensible suggestion, Councillor Heather Williams. I would ask you to accept that assurance. Councillor Dan Lentel, I think you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Just to underscore the point made by Councillor Heather Williams, the use of the language do nothing option. The do nothing option is what Edinburgh did after the 2005 referendum, in which I voted for a con charge. Oh, to be young. The do nothing proposal is about alternative ways of financing that don't place the burden on the poorest and the sickest in our society. And I would remind Council and our representative to outside bodies that Edinburgh has delivered trams and bus franchising, even though those of us who voted for congestion charging in the 2005 referendum lost by a big margin. So the language to say do nothing is disingenuous. And at a time when this organisation, the GCP's reputation has taken such a, frankly, terminal hit in the public mind, to be continuing this really awful kind of 90s spin cycle of, using language that to denigrate or to undermine a perfectly legitimate position, which is that the so-called STZ, congestion charging, is utterly unnecessary to deliver the kind of big ticket proposals that happened in Edinburgh after 2005, and actually it should change as a mark of respect to the fact that a lot of great things can happen even without congestion charging, a hated and immoral new tax that puts a paywall up between our residents and their healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lentel. Councillor Milne, did you want to respond to that? No. Okay, we'll note your comments on that and move to item 12, which is an update on the Oxford to Cambridge Pan-Regional Partnership. This is on pages 89 to 91. And again, I invite the Deputy Leader of Council to present this updated report.
This is going to be fairly quick from me because of the lack of notice that Councillor Bridget Smith wouldn't be available for this meeting. I haven't had a chance to consult with her over this, so perhaps we can get a written report on any developments from the Pan-Regional Partnership in writing for the Council, if that's satisfactory, Chair.
So, members, if we may, any questions on this item we'll deal with in writing subsequently. I would ask Council then just to note this report. Thank you, Council. Item 13, membership of committees and outside bodies. I'm not aware that any changes need to be reported at this meeting. There are none. So we move to item 14, questions from councillors. And I remind everyone that a period of 30 minutes is available for questions. This includes those questions where notice has been provided. And if there's still being time remaining after the questions with notice, we will deal with any questions which have been notified to the Elections and Democratic Services Manager before the start of this meeting. If there are any questions on notice are not dealt with at the meeting, then it will be for the preference of the member raising the question, either to be included on the agenda for the next meeting or to receive a written response. Members will recall there was one question which we did not get to at the last council meeting, and at the request of Councillor Richard Williams, a written response was given which has been circulated. So I now invite councillors to ask questions in the following order. We start with Councillor Daniel Lentel.
Thank you, Chair, as on the order paper.
Councillor Milnes, were you going to respond to this?
I am, Chair, thank you. So through you. The question refers to the immediate past chair of Cambridgeshire County Council. So I might check with Councillor Lentel through you that he's referring to Councillor Stephen Ferguson.
I am.
Yes. Good. I'll just make sure that we're not maligning or applauding somebody who didn't deserve it. This idea that the GCP is fundamentally undemocratic is to misunderstand the nature of the city deal, which was a contract between three councils, the university and local business, to deliver £500 million to improve the infrastructure in anticipation of the growth in jobs and housing. Fenland, East Cambs and Huntingdonshire district councils were not signatories to that deal. And although clearly the operation and deliberations of the GCP include the much wider travel to work area, which does include those areas, the clue's in the name. It was the city deal for Greater Cambridge. So the Greater Cambridge Partnership was constituted to deliver the city deal. So I think that's as far as I need to go for the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Lentel, did you have a supplementary?
I don't think the question was entirely answered, which was Councillor Ferguson had made it clear that he didn't think it was right that his residents were excluded from some quite drastic decisions being taken by the GCP, particularly including congestion charging. But as a supplementary question, one of my residents is a former chair of this council, and they were describing to me that the GCP was always intended as a stopgap, a stepping stone from the crazy paving landscape we've got now to unitary authorities. And I then had a long conversation with a very senior Lib Dem local government association person who said the only reasons that Cambridgeshire shouldn't go to unitary authorities is because the Conservative Party would control the north and the Labour Party would control the south. So my question is, can Councillor Brian Mills think of any better reasons why we shouldn't go to a unitary authorities? Thank you.
I'm not sure that that follows directly from the original question, but if Councillor Milnes is prepared to answer that, I don't know whether Councillor Milnes has anything to add.
I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it's related to the original question, Chair. So
that's something we might come back to on another occasion.
Sorry, if I could clarify, Chair, the question about democratic accountability, which is fundamental to my written question, is about the way that decisions are made in Cambridgeshire and whether decisions are made for all of Cambridgeshire. And we've heard how it is that the GCP came into being. We've heard why it is that the GCP doesn't include other areas of the county. But the GCP was always intended to be a stepping stone. And instead, it's become a millstone. And so I would be interested to hear why it is that we aren't doing what the GCP was actually set up to do by the person who set it up, with one person, by the way, one single part-time officer when it was first opened. Why isn't it that we are progressing towards the kind of slimmed-down unitary authorities that would actually provide democratic accountability for the decisions about transport being made by us? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lentel. In the light of what you've just said, I think we can regard that question as being within scope. I wonder whether Councillor Milnes would like to comment.
So the issue of a democratic representation is at the core of this, I believe. And the fact is that Councillor Stephen Ferguson, along with other of those of us who were county councillors, have that mechanism for influencing decisions of the GCP. They are one of the county council is a third of the voting members of the GCP, and that is the mechanism set up by the Conservative government at the time in the governance structure, and it was part of a wider devolution concept that the city deals were created and delivered to various places around the country, including our own. So the democratic deficit that is claimed is non-existent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. I can see that this is an issue we may come back to on future occasions. Next, we have a question from Councillor Dr. Shrabona Bhattacharya. Councillor Bhattacharya, do you want to put your question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question is on the agenda.
Thank you. I think Councillor Toomey Hawkins is also on Teams. Councillor Hawkins, do you wish to reply to that, or would you wish to submit a written reply? I think, Councillor Bhattacharya, if you would allow, we will secure you a written reply to that question.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you very much.
That. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Chair? Chair, can you hear me?
We now have Councillor Toomey Hawkins online, so perhaps we can, after all, give you a verbal response to that. No doubt supplement it with a written response if necessary.
Sorry about that. Technology sometimes doesn't work the way we want it to. The Greater Cambridge Shared Planning confirmed that the applicant that owns the site has not yet reviewed the scheme or engaged further on the next steps. The last update was around 6 months ago. And obviously, the economic environment is still difficult for developers, as we're beginning to appreciate. And it's unlikely that there will be any positive movement on this scheme in the short term. We continue to hope, of course, that the High Street of Camborne will be developed to meet the needs of residents in Camborne in future, but we have limited ability to influence this position. But if there's any updates, we'll definitely let you know.
Thank you. Councillor Bhattacharya, you can, if you wish, ask a supplementary question, but I'm keen to move to those in the room if we can. Makes for a better debate.
No problem. We can put it in the debate or in the next meeting or in the email. I have a quick supplementary question that when you say the near future, what do you mean by near future? Like next 6 months or next 6 years?
I'll probably say next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you both. We then move to a question from Councillor Michael Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. With the recent publication of the East West Rail Route Update Report, many residents in my ward and across the district are deeply concerned about the impact this scheme will have on their homes and their communities. How can residents best voice their concerns and seek changes to the scheme? And how will the council and leader, and indeed deputy leader, support them?
Councillor Brown-Mills.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Obviously, East West Rail is a government project, and we are engaging with both East West Rail and the parishes that are principally affected with this to try and get the best outcome possible. We've had several attempts to get the rail minister involved with this, with us directly, and those attempts have been left in the sidings. We'll continue asking, for example, Anthony Brown, our MP, to make representations to the ministers if we can't do it directly ourselves. And actually that's the action that we would recommend, or one of the actions that we recommend our local residents to take as well, to put pressure on East West Rail to make sure the mitigations that they are discussing at the moment come through and reduce the impact, the negative impact on local parishes along the route. Certainly there are local engagement meetings and online meetings that residents are able to join in with, and we also recommend that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, accepting that this is a government project and that our direct role to make changes is limited, could the leader, in their absence, the deputy leader, please update the council as to what engagements they and other members of the cabinet are undertaking with East West Rail Company to seek improvements to the scheme and to represent our residents?
Thank you. I can just give a brief outline of some of the meetings that we've had that have involved East West Rail. So Beth West and I have spoken probably 3 or 4 times at meetings, including at local rail summits, the online meetings, England's Economic Heartland, who are the sub-regional network, transport body, as well as Transport East, all of which have included East West Rail. So we're actively engaged with them, acting on our residents' behalf.
I then propose to move to a question from Councillor Susan van der Ven. Councillor van der Ven.
Thank you. Small village food banks that have arisen in response to the cost of living crisis have seen continuing demand as the struggle to make ends meet persists for many people. The roadshows designed to ensure that cost of living support information is known and can be taken up where needed will be very welcome, and those coordinating food banks are in a good position to share. The recent addition of the mobile food hub is very welcome. Please can we have an update on progress so far?
Who's going to respond to that? Councillor Bill Hanley.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. As part of the Sustainable Food Network, Council's officers contacted every known food bank in the South Cambs area. The first networking meeting of all of those food banks took place this week, actually, where discussions took place on how to work together and what the council might do in a way of support. One element of support offered were leaflets outlining the help available from the council, an updated general cost of living leaflet, and one encouraging those who are eligible to apply for council tax discounts. These leaflets will be distributed through the food banks. And in addition to this, officers are also investigating the feasibility of running outreach sessions at the food banks themselves to try to reach those people who are most in need of help, while being mindful of the stigma that can be attached to taking advantage of food banks. With regards to the mobile food hub, since its launch, it was only 2 weeks ago, it was launched. It's started to visit 3 locations each week, Duxford, Papworth and Orchard Park. The project is the first of its kind in our region, and so far it's been very well received by residents. There are further proposed locations at Fulbourn, in Willingham and Linton, and further details of these will be announced quite soon. The decision as to which locations to target were taken, bearing in mind census deprivation data, which the council's own data, and the location of current food banks. That was to ensure that the mobile food hub bridges the gap between what's existing, what the services that are existing. It's hoped that as the project progresses, more families can be supported and more locations visited. If residents want to access this service, all they need to do basically is to just turn up on the day, no referrals needed. It's only been running for a couple of weeks. It's not possible yet to report on the number of users, but this council will receive an update of all the cost of living schemes, including this one, at the next meeting.
Thank you. Councillor van der Ven, did you? No supplementaries. Right. Thank you for that. We have a written question from Councillor Halings, who is not able to join us and has accepted that she will receive a written reply to that. Can I just remind councillors that in putting a question, you can either read out the question as written, or you could just say as tabled if you prefer. That does save us some time. Councillor Stobart, do you have a question, I believe?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do. It's as written and concerns the Shared Prosperity Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. And who's going to? Councillor Peter MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. So as members may recall that South Cambs was allocated 1.7 million from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It has taken quite some time to get the grant funding agreements aligned and agreed with a combined authority and DULUC. But that is now starting to happen. The process or the schedule is over 3 years, so it's not just for this financial year. And the High Street project itself has an allocation of £200,000. This scheme is open to businesses, parish councils, community groups to apply for improvements made to the High Street. So that was one of the objectives, that the availability of the fund was over quite a wide group of people. It can be used for improvements in the vicinity of the high streets, repainting of rails, improvements of the appearance, hanging baskets, flower beds, planters, whatever people may think is appropriate for their local high street. And in addition to that £200,000, a further £100,000 has been allocated working with Cambridge Constabulary and the Community Safety Partnership to prevent incidences of ATM. Obviously that's a specific thing, specific locations where ATMs are located. And that funding is available to purchase anti-ram raid equipment to preserve the integrity of the ATM. And overall, we're hoping to launch the scheme in November 2023.
Councillor Stobart, did you have a supplementary?
A brief one, Chair, thank you. So in amongst the benefits that Councillor MacDonald has just outlined, what will be there for improving the lot of street traders who are working in these said high streets?
Chair, if I may answer through you. So, as Councillor Stobart and other members may be aware, we have a stallholder directory on the South Cambs website, which we're always looking to increase. It's a very diverse list. It includes the catering vans that we know. I think there are 10 listed on there, and which are licensed through South Cambs. But there are also, you know, artisan and crafts and various food and drink producers. The objective of which is to link them with each other and to link them with the communities. And that list is growing every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. My question is as on the agenda.
Who's going to? Councillor Brian Milnes again.
Thank you. The Environment Agency position of water supply and major development has emerged through a series of exchanges with the local planning authority since July 2022. Following approaches from the planning department to the Environment Agency seeking clarification of their position on the planning application for Bourne Airfield in summer 2022, the EA position on two sites, so Bourne and Waterbeach, was finally clarified in a letter from EA referencing an objection pending resolution of the WRMP, the Water Resource Management process with Cambridge Water, dated 16th of December 2022. Just as a little bit of background of this, the Environment Agency's position on, for example, water abstraction licensing has been under review. We're all familiar with the, particularly in this area, the abstraction of water to feed the crops. And it's, that's one of the components to the state of the water availability in the district. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, did you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Milnes, for that reply. I find that slightly shocking that for a year, the council in one shape or form has been aware of the concerns of the Environment Agency, but no steps were made to brief members on this, members of the Planning Committee in particular, but also members of the council more generally. This is an incredibly important matter going forward. So can I ask why there was no attempt to brief members about this, as this seems to be known about for quite some time? Are there any plans to provide members with a full briefing about this? And was it deliberately withheld?
Councillor Milnes, and I think that I see Councillor Hawkins is also back online, may like to add something to your response to this.
Thank you. The answer to the last point was no. And if Councillor Hawkins wants to make a contribution to the answer to that supplementary, I'm happy to do so. Or we can give a much more comprehensive answer, possibly complicated too, Freudian slip, in writing. And maybe given the time period for questions, we should do that.
Yes, I prefer one person to respond to each question as supplementary, but I think Councillor Hawkins was trying to get online before, and so I'd be happy to take a further response from Councillor Hawkins in this occasion.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much. The information was not deliberately withheld. Actually, I can refer members to the annual monitoring report that we published, I think it was 2 months ago, on page 38, paragraphs 54 to 56, where it shows that we actually published the fact that the Environment Agency had made objections, and we had taken that into account in our housing trajectory and the 5-year housing land supply calculations that we did. So it's out there in the public domain. And the only reason that there was no requirement at that point to brief members is because the requirement from the Environment Agency was dependent on the water resource management plan that Cambridge Water only just produced back in February, consulted on, and finished consultation in May. So until the EA actually adopts that or sees what it contains, we cannot make a decision that it will affect a review of the application for Bournemouth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm conscious that Councillor Richard Williams, you've had 2 answers, and I wondered therefore whether you wanted a second supplementary question on this occasion.
I wasn't expecting that, Chair. That's very generous. I thank both members for those answers. I take on board what Councillor Hawkins has said, but that was, again, only published 2 months ago, by which point it was in the public domain anyway, because the Environment Agency had published a letter themselves on the 23rd of May. So can I just urge a briefing on this? I think all members would greatly appreciate it and benefit from it.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Williams. We then move to Councillor Graham Cone.
Thank you, Chair, as on the order paper.
I think Councillor John Williams, you're going to respond to this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Given that we're in the middle of a 12-month trial to assess whether we can address our recruitment and retention issues, and given that that decision was made at a full council meeting within 6 months, now is not the right time to have the debate. At the end of the trial, certainly we want, and we have said all along, that we want council to review all the evidence and to take any decision on next steps at that time.
Councillor Cone, did you have a supplementary?
Thank you for that answer. Just a brief one, really. Just because the majority of councillors on this council haven't had a vote or a say on the 4-day working week. Is it that the leadership is sort of running scared of the council to have the vote? I know you say it's not the right time to have that, but I think when we make these changes, and I know it's part of a trial, but it's very hard to reverse these things. So I think it would be fair to councillors to have a vote on it.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I think it's fair that councillors should have all the evidence before them before they make up their minds on the 4-day week, and allowing a 12-month trial will give us that evidence to enable councillors to make that decision. I think looking at the trial in September means that we basically would only have one quarter's evidence before us, and I don't believe that that is sufficient for councillors to be able to decide on the trial. We have said all along that if performance fell, that we would stop the trial. But all the evidence so far is showing that performance is being maintained or even improved. So on that basis, we don't feel that there is a need to review it at the moment, and that the trial should be allowed to continue its full length to next April.
Councillor Bunty-Waters, I think you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. As on the agenda sheet, please.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Milnes is going to respond to this.
I am, Chair.
I think I was wrong to say that Councillor Milnes is going to respond to this. I think Councillor Hawkins is going to respond to this. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you, first of all, I must say I'm disappointed at the misrepresentation in the number quoted in this question. Seems to be an opposition hobby these days. The number quoted is a housing need assessment that has not yet been translated into houses that can be delivered. Besides which, of that need, there already is 37,000 accounted for up to 2031 in the current adopted local plans 2018 of both councils, and she voted for the South Cambs local plan back in 2018. Now, the Environment Agency's position is that the growth needs to be assessed through a robust water resources management plan process, which, as I said in the previous answer, the Cambridge Water did and finished consultation back in May. However, their current plan, which was agreed by the EA and DEFRA, was published in December 2019, and it took account of those 37,000 homes I already mentioned, which were provided for through the SAT allocations in 2018 plan. So the EA's concerns center upon the continued reliance on the assumptions in that plan published in December 2019. So the plan included growth assumptions, obviously, of those site allocations in the current local plan. Now, of course, when we published the first proposals consultation in 2021, we made it clear that the issue of water supply was a key consideration. And we were clear it required resolving before we can actually go on to adopt the emerging joint local plan. And we remain of that view, and our recent letter, which we sent on the 1st of June to the government, makes clear the need for the concerns of the water supply to be resolved if we are to continue to see the growth in this area. Now, as I said, we have identified the need, but the government also recognizes the contribution that Greater Cambridge as a whole makes to the UK, as is clear from the recent press articles that we had last Sunday, that they want the area to grow even more. I mean, Mr. Gove was one of the 3 recipients of our letter of 1st of June, but he now proposes 250,000 homes in this area without even bothering to ask us about it or talk to us about it. Now, whether we feel we can meet that need and the consequences of the area not doing so is a matter that we cannot determine until the issue of water supply has been resolved. So we will always, we're working with EA and water companies to understand what it is that will be done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Did you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Chair. I think so. Thank you very much for that response. But perhaps then, just as a planning council, we can make sure that the water infrastructure is a prerequisite for all significant growth here. Thank you.
Right, we're almost out of time, but Councillor Hawkins, if you're able to give a brief answer to that, that would be helpful.
Chair, through you, we already are doing that. Every application is considered on its own merit, and the Environment Agency are statutory consultees. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now, we have run out of time for questions. There was a further question due to be submitted by Councillor Corin Garvey, and I'm sorry that will have to be dealt with in writing subsequently. We are next to move on to motions, but before we do so, I suggest we take a 10-minute break and return here, let's say 3:30, if that's all right with members. Right, welcome back to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council. We are now at item 15, motions. And I would remind members that there is a maximum period of 30 minutes allowed for each motion to be moved, seconded and debated. And that includes dealing with any amendments. At the expiry of the 30-minute period, debate will stop immediately, and the mover of the original motion, or if the original motion has been amended, then the mover of the amendment, but the mover of the original motion will have the right of reply before the motion or amendment is put to the vote. So we have two motions before us this afternoon. The first is a motion standing in the name of Councillor Annika Osborne. Councillor Osborne, do you want to put your motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. The motion is, as you can see in the papers, I'm asking South Cambridgeshire District Council to join an increasing number of other councils in writing to Her Majesty's Government to call for a change in our outdated electoral laws and to enable proportional representation to be used in the UK's general elections. The Liberal Democrats have long supported a system which allows voters' voices to be heard. The outdated first-past-the-post system disenfranchises voters who feel that their voices do not count in general elections. Governments have been formed with as little as 35% of the vote, as with the majority Labour government in 2005, and a majority Conservative government formed with only 37% of the vote, while smaller parties' vote shares are not reflected. For example, 2019, the Liberal Democrats received 11.5% of the votes but hold only 1.7% of the seats in Parliament, and the Green Party received 2.5% while representing only 0.2% of Parliament. Proportional representation enables all votes to have equal value, allowing MPs to better reflect age, genders, protected characteristics of the communities and of the nation, and ending minority rule. I therefore ask this Council to resolve to write to Her Majesty's Government to support proportional representation in general elections. Thank you. I do. Councillor Eileen Wilson.
I'd like to speak later. Thank you.
Right, we'll come back to you then. So, other speakers on this motion? Councillor Cohn, would you like to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Chair. So I won't be supporting this motion. Firstly, because I think there are a lot of things at this council that we have got control over and should be considering in terms of local government, and this is a national issue. Personally, I don't support proportional representation. I favour the system that we have, and that's mainly due to electing a representative and feeling that that representative is accountable to my vote. I would also think there should be a referendum on electoral reform of this sort as well. So I personally won't be supporting this motion for those reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cohn. Then I think we have Councillor Byglott.
Thank you, Chairman. I also will not be supporting this. I think the reason that we're here is to represent our villagers and not to represent our parties. And I think this motion is a naked bid of self-interest for the Liberal Democrat Party in terms of trying to establish a political system which would lead to more representation for the Lib Dems. I would say to that, be careful what you wish for, because there is a long history of this in the Lib Dems and their precursors, the Liberals, who made numerous changes to our constitution, unwritten constitution, who expanded the franchise several times, all in a bid to get more votes for the Liberals. And they failed to realise that the Labour Party
would come on the scene. And so actually all the efforts of the early 20th century trying to rig a political system that would lead to liberal governments led to the precise opposite. And the Lib Dems have barely been in government at all since 1922 as a result. So we begin this motion talking about land-owning aristocrats and property-owning men. And that sounds like an insult to the Tories, but actually most of the 18th century was a period known as the Whig supremacy. And many of these aristocratic leaders, Dukes of Newcastle, Devonshire, Portland and Grafton, the Marquess of Rockingham, Earl Grey, Viscount Melbourne and Baron Grenville, were all liberals. So this is actually your own political heritage that you're actually criticising here. So our voting system is all about finding the best person to represent an area and focusing on that local area. It's not about political parties and it's not about political ideologies. One of the great dangers of a system of proportional representation is that it ignores local areas and hoovers up right across the whole country people with all kinds of strange ideas. And I'm sure most Lib Dem voters would regard preventing extremism as being one of the party's core principles, and yet proportional representation tends to lead to an increase in extremism because you're collecting people from all around the country with various extreme viewpoints and then putting them all together. Our first past the post makes it easier for independents to have a voice because independents are stronger in a local area and their voices are very important, as we've heard from my colleague Councillor Lantel earlier. It's important for independents who are locally based. So let's just have a look at the international record.
Councillor, I think we may be approaching 3 minutes, so if you would draw your remarks to a conclusion, please.
Okay, so I will forego talking about the disasters of PR in all the different countries like Belgium and Germany and Italy and things, and just to say that the people don't end up with the kinds of governments they want because of horse trading, which can lead to corruption, and it's actually the forming of a coalition where the government is formed rather than with the people because there are such a large number of parties. Thank you.
Thank you. I think next we have Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
I think Councillor Khan was before me, but actually I'm happy to.
If you're happy to give way, then I'll call Councillor Khan. I hadn't spotted Councillor Khan. My apologies.
I think it's rather unfortunate to comment about the extremism in terms of first past the post system, seeing how the present government has moved towards the margins of the party's political viewpoints, largely because of a first past the post system and trying to include a maximum number of viewpoints within one party. But what I really wanted to comment was that where people in this country have been given the chance of choosing which political voting system they want, in the Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, they have gone for a proportional system. And that applies also to local elections. So I would comment that this is very much applicable to local elections. And I'm not speaking that in terms of the local Liberal Democrat interests, because in this area, first past the post has worked to the favour of Liberal Democrats. We got 80% of the local councillors, and we had only 48% of the votes in the last election. So it's not in our interest, but it is in our interest in terms of justice, in terms of representation of what people's viewpoints. You vote, people mainly vote for the, how I say, the general viewpoint that people present in Parliament, in local government, or in the election where they are, in the forum where they are. You're electing a representative democracy, somebody to have the right approach to the problems. You're not telling them exactly what to vote in each system, just say you've got that approach. So I would comment that, I mean, to give you the examples of what's happened in Scotland, where the system is determined by the Scottish Parliament, the local government is elected by a proportional system. In Northern Ireland, both Assembly, also you have that system. Wales has recently been given the choice, has passed an act, and from 2027, each council will be able to choose which system it wants, but it's given the opportunity to have a proportional system. When they're given the choice, local areas want a proportional system to accurately represent their local members. So the point that you make about representation is not actually a valid one. In fact, they've chosen systems in which there is a local representative, so there is a link between the area, and there is also a proportionate system. So I would comment that I would hope that if the proposals of this motion were carried, they would also be carried at local level. The assumption has been that if you have general elections, it would also be at local level. But that's something that I wish to emphasize that is important. And I would very much support this motion. I think it's a matter simply of justice, proper representation of the people that you're representing. And without that, without a proportional system, you cannot.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Before I call the next speaker, you said you made some points about representation. I didn't make any points about representation. Please be careful to address your remarks to the chair in a debate of this nature. Councillor Richard Williams.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Just to pick up on one thing Councillor Khan said, obviously he's quite right that the Liberal Democrats have done very well at a first past the post, and if they really, really do believe in proportional representation, they could start here. I'm sure my group would love to take up some council committee spaces and some council chairs if you wish to put your principles into action in this council, but I rather suspect you won't. Anyway, on to the core motion. Now, as Councillor Cohn and Councillor Bygott have said, I would much rather we were talking about things that are actually within the control of this council. We all know the Liberal Democrats favour proportional representation. We all know that at the end of this debate you're going to vote in favour of proportional representation. Lib Dem council backs PR shock. It's not really much news, and I would rather we were talking about something that's actually relevant to our residents we can control. But anyway, on the substance of it. Now, there are various assertions in this motion about PR ensuring all votes count and all votes have equal value and seats won match votes cast. That is not always or necessarily the case with PR. That only works with a list system of PR. So we've got a motion before us talking about PR, but what version of PR? Are we talking about a list system, in which case we break the link between politicians and constituents, and we give power to party managers who decide if people are MPs or not? It depends if you get on with your party, whether you get on the list or not. Completely break the control of local voters to control who MPs are. That's not actually a very popular system in the world. Most systems that are PR are not actually pure PR, and then you lose the proportionality. So it's not simply PR, proportional, all votes count, first past the post, bad. It doesn't. That's not the way the world works. Wales has been mentioned. It's a country about which I know a little bit and follow. At the last Welsh Parliament elections, the Labour Party got 38% of the vote and 50% of the seats. That's in a system that is supposedly proportional. It's not actually that proportional. We never got a choice, actually, about the electoral system in Wales. We were given it, and we never got a referendum choice on that. So when you talk about PR, what PR are you actually talking about? Are you talking about a mixed member system? Are you talking about a list system? Are you talking about the D'Hondt system? There are many, 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 many versions. And as I say, they're not necessarily all proportional. So I think there is a flaw at the heart of this, because there is an assumption that PR is proportional, as I say, when it is not necessarily so. There is also a claim about, PR ends minority rule. PR doesn't end minority rule. Chancellor Schulz's party got 25% of the vote in the last German federal elections. He's still the Chancellor. And actually, if you go back through elections in the UK, if you did have a PR system, if it was a straight proportional list system, the Prime Minister you'd get was pretty much the Prime Minister you got
Williams,
anyway.
can I ask you to draw your remarks to a close, please?
So I do not support this motion, and I do not support proportional representation. I believe first past the post provides decisive, clean government, and the people are sophisticated enough to use it. And sometimes that works against my party, sometimes it works in our favour.
Thank you. Then I would call Councillor Lentel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not in favour of PR, but I was elected as a Lib Dem and I think it's right that I vote for this motion. The one point I would make with Councillor Bygott, the Lib Dems don't benefit from PR. In London in 2000, the Lib Dems got 4 seats, 18% of the vote was first past the post, 14% was on the list. The previous London Assembly elections in 21, Lib Dems got 2 seats, 10% of the first past the post, there you go, you pretend I said that right, and 7% of the list votes. The London mayoral elections, of course, are done by a supplementary system. In 2000, the Lib Dems came 4th with 11.9%, and in 2021 they came 4th with 4.4%, failing to get into the second round both times. In Scotland, in 1999, the Lib Dems under Jim Wallace got 17 seats, 14% of the constituency vote, 12% of the regional vote. In 2021, the Lib Dems got 4 seats with 6% of the constituency vote and 5% of the regional vote. Again, in Wales, in 1999, the Lib Dems got 6 seats, 13% of the FPTP vote, and 12% of the list vote. In 2021, 1 seat with 4% of the vote, and in both the first past the post and the list systems. There's a reason Lib Dems lose elections, and it's not the voting system. The reason Lib Dems lose elections is because they take up policy positions like congestion charging that are massively unpopular. And the result is, as we saw in our own council, the late much lamented John Lovelock won in 2022 with 1,544 votes, and Councillor Wilson won with 864 votes, a 40% decrease that is very similar to the historic Longstanton, Oakington and Northstowe by-election that brought Councillor Bygott back into this room. Proportional representation is the wrong answer to the wrong question, because ultimately what matters in a democracy isn't how the votes are cast, it's how they're counted and what happens next. And what we're seeing in our part of the world is a huge mandate for the Lib Dems to deliver for the residents of South Cambridgeshire and for our colleagues on the blue team to take some time out. And what have we got? We've got a congestion charge.
Can I ask you to draw your remarks to a conclusion, please?
I will be voting for this because I believe we have to listen to the voters. And I was elected as a Lib Dem, and that's the right thing to do. But the other right thing to do is to listen to our voters, even when we don't agree with them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lentel. Councillor Ellington.
Thank you, Chairman. I will not go on very long. I think there's 2 things I want to say. One is that I think it's desperately important that there is a named individual that the particular area that's voting knows, recognises and believes will do what they want them to do, and is not just a political figure that somebody ticks the right box to vote for. So I think it's very much more important to be an individual than it is necessarily to be aligned with any particular party. That's my personal view, and I shall not be voting for this. But the other thing that I think is quite important is that when you get proportional representation, it tends to lead to stronger voices in smaller parties with very outlandish ideas being stuck in a room together to try and solve a problem which they don't solve, as I think the Irish government are finding right now. So I really do feel that this is not a step forward, it would just be a step back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellington. I now call on Councillor Drew.
Thank you. I'm always struck by the fact that so many people
Nor did I. Carry on, Councillor.
I'm always struck by the fact that it is often the case that elected politicians seem to believe that both themselves and the voters are unable to cope with more than one thing at once. The statement we hear in so many parliaments and council chambers of, oh, we ought to just be focusing on this or focusing on that kind of thing. We are apparently allegedly intelligent politicians who might be able to do more than one thing at once. And I think that is entirely reasonable for the Liberal Democrat group to put forward a proposal which they believe will improve the lot of voters. So therefore the introduction of proportional representation would improve politics. I'm also eternally struck by the opposition of our Conservative colleagues to proportional representation in what seems to be an incredibly particularist way, as if somehow, because we are British, we know better. And the French, the Dutch, the Belgians, the Danish, the Norwegians, the Swedes, the Italians and the Germans and such like, they have such terrible government. They have such awful government. I recognise that our Conservative colleagues may well not, Chair, wish to think this is what they're saying, but this is basically what they're saying. What they are saying is that the proportional representation systems used on the continent of Europe somehow fail the people of Europe. I believe that actually, if we look at the economic growth of our European colleagues over the last 70 or 80 years, we look at issues of social cohesion, if we look at issues related to disparity of wealth and income, we will actually find that perhaps their proportional representation systems have done them quite well. Regarding the fact that apparently people sat in a room are unable to find a coalition, coalition seems to be this scary word in British politics, as if somehow it's a bad thing. Yet, all over the world, coalition governments are normal. They are the norm for almost every other country in the world. Again, I am struck by this idea that, because we are British, we can't do what those other people do. I would also suggest that the idea that having a first-past-the-post system avoids extremism is really a very poor argument to make. Regardless of whether or not we think it's relevant to us, I would posit that a government minister ordering the painting over of murals of Mickey Mouse in a children's detention centre for refugees is extremist behaviour. That is a single-party government elected under first-past-the-post. We have nothing to fear from proportional representation. And finally, as my 3 minutes come along, yes, as Liberal Democrats, we do often propose things that harm us. That's because we believe in the people and we believe in what is right. And if it harms us, so be it, because it will make the country a better place. Thank you.
Councillor Milnes.
Thank you, Chair. I really would like to have a longer conversation with Councillor Bigot to unpick many of his fatuous arguments that I've heard today in the chamber. So I look forward to that opportunity. The mayoralty, I'll give you as an example of the Tories' attitude to first-past-the-post versus proportional representation. When proportional representation was found to not deliver the results they wanted, they reverted to first-past-the-post. In 2019, the Tory seats needed 38,000 votes to elect an MP. It took 51,000, roughly, for Labour MPs to be elected. 336,000 for a Lib Dem to be elected. How the results of that election were a fair representation in Parliament of the voting intent, you can't answer that, because there was no linkage between the number of votes cast and the seats gained. And we got Boris Johnson, followed by Liz Truss. Voter suppression. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was until fairly recently a cabinet minister, actually accepted that voter ID was a gerrymandering exercise. The opposition, the Conservatives would have used anything to remain in power. And that's why we really need to move as fast as possible to probably a single transferable vote proportional representation system. But a proportional representation system would deliver the results that the people wanted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milnes. I would urge members to stick directly to the subjects in the motion so far as possible. I don't see any other speakers, so we now come back to Councillor Eileen Wilson, who is seconding the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to second this motion. First past the post is a relic from a bygone age and does not have its place in the 21st century society. Proportional representation ensures that every vote counts and results in an outcome that better reflects the will of the electorate. It could also go some way to encouraging those who don't vote because they believe that voting doesn't make a difference. It might make them next time go out and vote.
Thank you for keeping your remarks short. We come back to Councillor Annika Osborne to sum up her motion.
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing further to add and I put the motion for a vote. Thank you.
Right, thank you. We have a proposer, a seconder, and I propose therefore we move directly to the vote. We have a proposer and a seconder. We have summed up the debate. Is this a point of order?
I will not be voting because I missed the start of the debate.
Thank you for that declaration. I would urge any members who may feel that they have not heard the full debate to consider whether they're in a position to vote. But having said that, I think we now move to an electronic vote. Indeed, we have already started. You know that we press the blue button first, and then if you're in favour of the motion, you press the green. If you're against it, you press the red. How many have you got in the room? Thank you. I suspect some of you will have heard me nonetheless, but my microphone wasn't on. So that motion is passed by 24 votes to 5. We then move on to the motion standing in the name of Councillor Natalie Warren-Green. Councillor Warren-Green, would you like to move your motion? Can we take down the vote and then we'll start again in a moment?
Thank you, Chair.
Right. The floor is yours.
Thank you. A motion proposed by County Councillor Farouz Thompson was approved by Cambridgeshire County Council on the 16th of May 2023, whereby a commitment was made to support childminders across Cambridgeshire to set up and relocate. At present, parents and carers can access 15 hours per week of funded childcare for children aged 3 to 4, with working parents able to access an additional 15 hours, 30 hours in total. Vulnerable 2-year-olds are also able to access 15 hours per week of funded childcare. In the spring budget, central government announced that there would be an increase in childcare support available to families to be rolled out in stages over the next 2 years. This will start from April 2024 and will assist with childcare for children as young as 9 months. It's therefore expected that demand across the county will increase and will provide an opportunity for childminders to set up businesses to satisfy the demand in their localities. Childminders play an important role within the community, offering flexible childcare to a restricted number of children per house. However, data shows that Cambridgeshire, there's a downward trend in the number of childminders available. In South Cambridgeshire, the data shows that the number of childminders operating in the new developments is lower than those operating in the surrounding villages. Despite targeted recruitment campaigns, it's been brought to the attention of officers of Cambridgeshire County Council and staff working for the Professional Association of Childcare and Early Years, called PACEY, the restrictive covenants on new build developments are common and prohibit occupants from running a business from home, which includes childcare. Whilst it's possible to have a covenant revoked, it's never guaranteed. In Northstowe, which is part of my ward, we have one established childminder for the 123 children eligible for funded childcare, in contrast to the neighbouring Longstanton, also in the ward, which has 76 children eligible and 6 childminders. In Waterbeach, there are 3 childminders for the 156 children eligible for funded childcare, in contrast to Cottenham, which has 142 children eligible for a funded place and 6 childminders. Whilst Cambourne is now an established settlement, with building starting in 1998, it's clear that there's a high demand for childminders, with 22 currently in operation. With Cambourne West underway, it's essential that steps are in place to enable new residents the same opportunities and to prevent additional pressure on childcare places. I'm pleased to share in this motion that already Greater Cambridge Shared Planning Service has been discussing this blanket covenant with Homes England, who are now aware that the restriction on childminders works at cross purposes with their intention that residents of new builds have a positive experience living in their homes. In addition, sustainable community aims require residents to be able to access work, education and all services by either active travel or public transport. So today I'm aiming to gain support to enable childminders living in the new developments across South Cambridgeshire to establish businesses from their homes. This will mean that they're exempt from the covenants in place for strategic new developments. Specifically, I'm requesting, as indicated in the motion, firstly, that SCDC commence meetings with Homes England and other house builders active across Cambridgeshire to A, address their childcare crisis for the new communities being delivered as part of the current adopted local plan of 2018, and B, in view of the predicted growth, engage them in policy development to achieve buy-in for policy that will meet the needs of childcare providers and families in the emerging joint local plan. And secondly, that Greater Cambridge Shared Planning Service, if possible, will develop a planning policy regarding childminders that will include feedback from the engagement with house builders and stakeholders across Greater Cambridge, and organisations like PACEY to ensure that the needs are balanced across all the interests of the community so that childminders are exempt from a blanket covenant to restrict businesses being run from homes. So these actions are intended to enable childminders and parents of young children to benefit from the support included by the government in the spring budget in time for the launch of the proposed funding for childcare from April 2024.
Remarks for conclusion.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Warren Green, you're welcome to repeat your last few remarks because I was speaking at the time and others may not have heard you.
I will repeat those last 3 sentences, which these actions that I'm asking for are intended to enable childminders and parents of young children to benefit from the support included by the government in the spring budget in time for the launch of the proposed funding for childcare from April 2024. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is your motion seconded?
It is.
Seconder? Who's your seconder?
Good.
Councillor Ricketts.
Yeah, I'm happy
Are you going to
to
speak
second.
now or later?
Yes, I'd like to speak now, if I may.
The floor is yours.
I'm happy to be, and honoured to be asked to second this motion. To be able to offer a full range of childcare options in new towns is all part of placemaking. Those options may be preschools, nurseries, or in a home setting with a childminder. Different settings are important because they suit different children and their families, Each individual family has varying needs and different priorities. It's about access to choice. Childminding is part of early years education. It is regulated by Ofsted with precise adult to child ratios according to the children's ages. Childminders are inspected by Ofsted and awarded ratings, such as Outstanding Good. They plan their activities, learning through play and experiences. Childminders meet up in parks, take the children to playgroups, music sessions, etc. They are close-knit, supportive community groups in themselves. When it comes to building a community, be that an established one or a new one, every age group has a right to be a part of that. It's about nurturing and socialisation. Moving to a new community can be very isolating. Living in a new place to you as a parent where there's often no extended family nearby can be very detrimental to mental health and feel very limiting. Our society and the world of work has changed, and we need to help to address this issue. Nurseries can also be very expensive, beyond the means of many middle earners. And childminding is often the only viable option. Becoming a childminder with very young children of your own can also be a financial lifeline when returning to a previous career, post-maternity leave, or parental leave isn't a viable option. Childminders are actually the backbone and unifying thread of the childcare system. New towns need to be about providing opportunities across each demographic. Nurturing the youngest in society and supporting parents is one of the most crucial aspects of our society to get right. It pays us back in spades in the long run. I hope you will support this excellent motion brought to Council by Councillor Tilly Warren-Green. This is what being a modern caring council is all about.
Thank you to Councillor Rippeth. I think we next move to Councillor Ellington.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure. I have no problems with this, so I would be happy to vote for it. But I'm not sure that it's not a storm in a teacup. My understanding of covenants is that the person that puts the covenant on a particular building is the only person who can actually demand that that covenant is adhered to. And my experience of developers is that they aren't prepared to even come and take responsibility for a house that's flooded due to their bad design and build. And I fear very much that actually enforcing the covenant is so unlikely to happen. I'd like to know when and if it's ever happened already.
And I take it you're not expecting an immediate answer to that question. We then move to Councillor Lento.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I 100% support this motion. It's exactly as Councillor Rippeth said, childminding is the backbone of childcare. I've been a stay-at-home dad since 2015, and we are phenomenally fortunate in Over and Willingham to have some absolutely brilliant childminders and also, of course, preschools. While I accept the point that Councillor Ellington is making, I just don't think the onus should be on potential business owners or business creators to have to try to get the covenants changed. So the thing that I would suggest is that this motion be passed. I also think it's worth having a conversation about whether as Councillor Ellington said, whether developers could simply start just waiving the covenants voluntarily rather than requiring great deals of action from us. I'd also say, look, you know, there are lots of businesses, many of which are run from the home by women, which frankly, these covenants are restrictive of, and they aren't a good idea in general. But in this particular instance, they're absolutely appalling and they need to be got rid of. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cone.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion. I think it's important to get that conversation started with Homes England and their house builders. I think much of what I would say on this has already been said. I think, taking on board Councillor Ellerton's comments, I think it is important that we really look hard at where we can make a difference in this conversation. But as Councillor Rippeth said, anyone with children will know how difficult this situation has become.
Thank you. Next I call on Councillor Bigott.
Thank you, Chairman. So this motion has my unqualified support. I would like to congratulate Councillor Warren Green for having identified this issue and brought it to our attention, because I think it is quite a serious problem that we have. I think these sorts of covenants are possibly motivated because people have in their mind's eye some kind of business that would be greatly disruptive to other residents, some kind of noisy business that has people banging hammers and stuff all day. And people, it's quite common in our society for people to make rules with that sort of thing in mind, not realising that it has a huge unintended consequence. Children are the future of our society, and it's very, very difficult for young parents today. Our society has made it extremely difficult for people to have children and to raise those children. And I think that anything that makes it easier for young families and takes some of the pressure off them is a thing that we should support. So, very well done.
Thank you, Chair. I am one of the examples that Judith Rippon was talking about. I, in my previous career as a solicitor, then had my first child, and on doing the sums and obviously wanting to have some interaction with my child outside or during 9 to 5, I chose to become a childminder and to take in other people's children with my children. I was able to offer one of my clients flexibility because she needed to start at 7:30 in the morning. And also I was able to support one family where there were children at school age and a younger child. These cannot always be done in nursery settings and more formal settings. So I would like to thank Councillor Warren Green for bringing this matter to our attention, and I fully support this motion.
Next I call on Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I speak from experience when I say that it's a very stressful experience going back to work after having a child and then having to find childcare. I was speaking with a resident in my village who actually runs 2 day nurseries. She started off as a childminder, then moved on to nursery provision. And she was telling me, we were talking on a separate matter, that the nurseries she knows about, the ones she runs, then the Cottenham Day Nursery that was opened only a few years ago, and nurseries in other villages are all full with waiting lists that won't open until September 2024. So people who move into this area won't have a day nursery place. So unless they can find one of the rare childminders who has a place, they're actually prevented from taking up work or from taking up the work hours they want. In addition to that, she pointed out to me that childminding is one of the main planks of the government's new childcare provisions that are coming online, and it will rely on more and more childminders. Separately, in new communities, having childminders who allowing parents to leave their children with childminders who live in their own community, and those childminders will network together and build bonds with the parents and the other childminders and the children. It can contribute to social cohesion and prevent isolation, so I fully support every aspect of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Next, I propose to ask Councillor Jimmy Hawkins, who is on Teams, to contribute to the debate.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think, given the recent announcement from Michael Gove wanting to build 250,000 houses in this area, this is quite a very timely motion. Hopefully that outlandish idea will be put to one side. But in any event, new communities that we're building now, trying to deliver as part of our adopted local plans, definitely will benefit from some of this, which is why the discussion has started with Homes England. In the short term, I think looking at it from the planning viewpoint, it might be that rather than a blanket policy, we could start with introducing through Section 106 that specifically, enables local childminding. But then, for the emerging local plan, yes, further discussions can continue to see whether or not, we can, put this together as a policy. But either way, we, definitely we'd like to, see something come forward, with this and fully support the motion. And I would recommend that we all do. Thank you very much.
Bradman.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an excellent motion. We voted for it at County Council, and I'm very glad that it looks as though people are likely to vote for it here. And like others, my concern is that we as in our local plan, we have planned for developments as new towns, not scattered amongst our village and infilling villages. And where we have developers developing new towns, these are the kinds of developments that have these blanket covenants applied to them. And what's really important is that any qualms people might have about the proximity of these businesses to others will be dealt with by Ofsted. Childminders are inspected by Ofsted. So, we do not need to worry about concerns about the number of children or the hours that they're being hosted, because this is covered by very careful legislation. So I'm very glad that members are looking as if they're minded to support this motion, because I think it's an excellent motion and we really need to make provision for childcare going forward in order to enable parents to continue to work. Thank you.
Next I call Councillor Helen Leaming.
Thank you, Chair. As this motion focuses on new developments, I would like to add the perspective of an old new town, Camborne. New towns have unusual demographics with higher numbers of young families and young children than a more established town or village. In addition, they're more likely to have families without support networks around them as people move into the area as first residents. These are communities that need childcare. Having a wide range of flexible, high-quality, affordable choices is essential to help people manage their lives in a way that works best for them. For some families, childminders are the best option to suit the needs of their children. Parents may feel that education and care in a home environment suits their child best. They may wish for siblings to be cared for together with wraparound care before and after school. Children can be involved in many local groups, coffee mornings and outdoor play with children who live in their local area, or they may wish to attend an after-school activity. I've seen this firsthand in Camborne as a local parent, witnessing the excellent work of this team of childcare providers. Childminders play an important role in building young communities and creating networks of support that are important for well-being. Their impact on the local community is positive. Childminding is not a standard business, and it's unfortunate that Homes England overlooked clarifying this when issuing guidance around running a business from home. Childminding offers an alternative to nursery and later after-school childcare options, both of which are often oversubscribed. As Councillor Warren Green stated, Camborne currently has 22 registered childminders. This figure has fallen from a peak of 33. We can only speculate on the reasons for this reduction, but PACey, the Professional Association for Childcare in Early Years, said they felt it reflected the decline in numbers seen nationally, and it appears significant because numbers are high. The demand for places still exists, and many settings are still full without available places. Childminders in Camborne are also attracting families who don't actually live in Camborne but travel past on their way to work. Restrictive covenants that curtail the provision of this high quality, highly regulated childcare in new towns adds to a sense of isolation and frustration in new communities. These covenants also limit the employment opportunities of young working adults who may struggle without local provision. The lack of local childcare increases car dependency and puts additional pressure on neighbouring childcare provision in villages surrounding new build areas. For these reasons, I support the proposal suggested in the motion that the Council takes an active stance to promote and support childminders to be able to offer their much needed services in new communities as part of our commitment to building places where people want to live.
Thank you. I see no other speakers, so Councillor John Batchelor.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just to say, wearing my hat as the lead member for housing, that for information that we do not put any obstacles in the way of our tenants becoming childminders. There's no covenants or anything like that. You know, childminders obviously have to meet the obligations of the licensing authorities and so on, but other than that, we're happy that people run a business from home. Thank you.
Thank you. I just note in passing that Councillor Richard Williams has had to leave us. I then come back, I think, to Councillor Warren Green to sum up on her motion, please.
I think we've actually heard a lot of positivity around the room. I think we should take on board some of the thinking around how many people, how many builders are actually putting the covenants in place. I think that could be looked at as part of the investigation and the discussions with them. So I thank Councillor Ellington for that point. And thank you everybody else for the positivity, and I think we could go to vote. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We then proceed directly to an electronic vote. If we can set it up. It is suggested that we might do this by affirmation. We've set up the vote. I prefer an electronic vote on these motions. So if you want to vote in favour of the motion, obviously it's green. If you want to vote against, press red. If you want to abstain, press yellow. I think we've all voted, noting that Councillor John Williams said he wouldn't be voting, and it is rare that my memory is too long. It's usually the other way around. I think that we have all voted, 28 votes, and we appear to be all in favour, so perhaps I should have accepted Councillor John Batchelor's suggestion, but we are all in favour. So that ends our motions for today. Before I move to Chair's engagements, or perhaps as part of Chair's engagements, I think it was remiss of me not to have mentioned the passing of former councillor Robin Page, who died recently. Robin was one of the authority's original councillors, representing Barton Ward from 1973 right up till 2006. And then the Haslingfield ward after a short gap from 2012 to 2016 as an independent. I think some of us knew him as councillors. I didn't actually know him as a councillor. Many did, some here did, but many of us knew him for his conservation work outside the council and for his TV work and regular column in the Daily Telegraph. And so our thoughts are with former Councillor Page's family and friends. I think it was right that we should mark his passing. Members, Chair's engagements. Just to give you a verbal update, I've only had one engagement since you kindly elected me to the post, which was the reception given by the High Sheriff, Dr. Bharat Kumar Ketani, at Wisbeach on the 28th of June, My vice chair has, however, attended a couple of events. The Memorial Day ceremony at the American Cemetery on 29th of May, and the Civic Leaders Open Day at RAF Molesworth on 22nd of June. This draws the... No, it doesn't, not quite. I want to add one more thing, which is that if members think of some event or engagement in their ward or indeed beyond where they think it would be helpful to draw the attention to the involvement of the South Cambs District Council, I would be very happy to attend if invited. So perhaps members would just consider that. That said, this does draw this meeting of the council to a close. The next council meeting will be held at 2 o'clock on the 5th of October, and I therefore close this meeting at 4:26 p.m. Thank you very much.